I would like to call this meeting of the Facilities Use Committee to order at 6:32. Roll call, please.
David Pombo,
Here.
Colin Clements,
Here.
Alvina Kaiser, here. Jimmy LeGrand,
Here.
Erica Smith Payne,
Here.
Corey Strock.
Absent. Receiving of public comments. Would any of the large crowd out there like to say anything at this point?
Ben?
Hearing none, we will move on to the facilities use update.
So enclosed in your packet are the facility use meeting minutes from the last facility use committee meeting we had, which was in November, and it's already been submitted to the board. You also have the facility use reports from November 2016 through January 2017, and they are pages 4 through 10 in your packets. Once again, as we know, every month, the multipurpose room is heavily used at all school sites. And then at the high school, this does include the high school events as well, but the large gym and the small gym are heavily used there. And then, of course, the peak times are still within, looks like it starts to increase around 5 p.m. and then starts to shut down around 10.
I'm guessing that the reason that the items that are used at different campuses are not the same for all is that if there's no use, it doesn't show up on the graph.
Right, because if, usually during school hours, they're not always putting them on this calendar either.
All right.
The next item is the finance report, page 11. And we have the beginning balance, the amount of revenue that has been received to date, the expenses that are charged to the account, and then the revenue, the balance. It's not really the total revenue, it's the actual balance to date. So we have approximately $127,000. I know there's another payroll for any facility use timesheets have been submitted for the month of January. Those would not be paid for out of here yet. They wouldn't show, they wouldn't appear.
I'm not a numbers or a word guy, so I'm going to ask this question. The 38,000 in the darker gray box, what does that represent?
That's the revenue minus the expense.
Oh, the difference of those two.
So 52,000 in revenue collected.
If I was a numbers guy, I probably would have noticed that those one minus the other equaled that.
And the 38 plus the 88 is the 127
Exactly.
cumulative to date.
Exactly. In your binder, tabbed denied applications reflects the organizations that did have it denied at their initial request, which you can see on the far right-hand corner. All of these, except for 2, have been approved at other school sites, so we were able to accommodate them elsewhere.
All right.
And Saints basketball, they didn't inquire after their,
So they were rejected and failed to pursue it further.
Okay, so on the very,
oh,
oops,
it's a page
sorry.
before.
Yeah.
We'll get to that
Okay.
again later.
I was like, this can't be right.
And it wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, because usually we'll list them on the agenda, but as we're growing, it's taking up more space.
And
And we were able to accommodate them elsewhere.
this list of denied, rejected, that's not in the packet, right? The
No.
packet ends with the finance.
Yes.
Okay, because
Yes.
I'm like, if it was in there, I failed to review
Didn't
it.
see it.
All right.
Because sometimes too, we have some that come in a little bit later and we want to reflect that and report that to you. And did we have any reimbursements to organizations? We had one that maybe had received a credit, but,
They asked for another site and then
okay,
I just,
perfect.
In the future, maybe we could get these lists as up to date as when we're emailed
Okay.
the
The packet.
packet, just so we just so we're not looking at them for the first time here at the
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah,
Do you want to see
I
those also
agree.
that were accommodated at other sites as well? Or just, for instance, the two that were rejected?
If you've already got this
Okay,
in this form, you could send it and we can,
we'll include it.
Yeah, I agree, just whatever you have done through the point that the packet
Packets
goes
goes out.
out. That way, if I look on it and I mean, it's kind of selfish, but if I see an organization that I know I'm going to hear about, I can be
Oh, that's a
thinking
good
about
idea.
it rather than waiting until I step foot in here.
Right.
maybe call Alvina and say,
What's this?
what's going on here? So when they start throwing rocks at me, I know how to,
Exactly. You at least know which direction they're coming from.
We will do that. We will do that.
thank you.
Okay. Oh, you get to go to the next item, V.
What is V sub A? Oh, is that 5?
Yeah, that's 5.
Oh,
I said V though too, 5.
Information and discussion items. Tier 1 organization facility use at another school site.
So we have sometimes tier 1 organizations, usually our own school sites, and in this case, it was our music program, that is using not the site that they are normally assigned to. For instance, Mr. Roxell is at the high school. But according to our handbook, unless you're prior approved by the District Facilities Use Committee to be certified, you cannot work at a different site and waive the custodial being at the site. So we had this situation happen last year, but we didn't want to stop the use of it. So I knew we were going to have the meeting. I wanted to add it to the agenda. In this case, if he needs to by chance use another school site, we still have to pay for the custodian at an elementary site on a Saturday. We are charging it to the facility use account for now. Because are we gonna charge the school site for custodial coverage? If Mr. Roxell wants to come forward and say, I'd like to be a certified, he'd have to come forward to the facility use committee and saying, I'd like to meet these criteria, and then there would be no cost of custodian to let him in and out of the facility.
Right, he would just need to have
The key
access
to-
to the site.
exactly.
And the reason is, as you know, our site is overused, overused. And right now, for example, during his winter percussion season and winter guard season, MHYB is in there every Saturday. There was a scheduling debacle where he had scheduled things, and then when the changeover happened this year, dates got lost and MHYB got put in, and so now he doesn't have the dates that he needs to practice. We would really like to be on our own, but it would mean pushing MHYB out, and we
Right.
already approved them, and so, I mean, he's not happy about it, but there are other gyms available, and it would help us if he would be able to use it. He just needs access
Now,
to.
I don't, and I think it was an 11-hour day. Is it
That's-
absolutely necessary to have someone?
That's the question. It's 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., so it's 11 hours. Are we okay with just having someone come open up in the morning and then come back in the evening and open up? Because per the policy, we're supposed to have someone there the whole time, which is a long day and
Right.
obviously a lot of money. And obviously, we know Troy, so he's not going to trash the place, so we're
Well,
not
and
worried
on a
about that.
Saturday, if he's there after Alejandra leaves, we don't charge our own, he's there, he has keys to the thing, he locks up himself.
Right.
So it's essentially like the same thing, it's just at a different site.
Inside, and that's the
Yes.
issue we came up with, but we didn't want to turn it away. So the handbook says someone has to be there, we'll have to pay somebody. We did have someone come in to help relieve the custodian for lunch, because we cannot have someone work 11 straight hours like that without a lunch, so we did arrange for that.
So the handbook, and I haven't,
I know it's
since
a lot
I've
to
been
read.
on the committee, I haven't read the entire handbook. But if I understand you correctly, you're saying that the handbook allows if they're going to be on their own site, I'm going to call it their own site,
Right.
then the custodial does not have to be there the whole time. But for some reason, if they're going to be at a neighboring site, then custodial has to be
Our
there.
District employee.
District
Currently, yeah, that's the way it is. I'll give you an example. Our winter ball, we didn't need a custodian. I was there, Brian was there, the leadership teachers were there, we all have keys.
If you had a scheduling conflict and you had to have the winter ball for the high school
Somewhere else
at
we would
another
have to pay.
multi-purpose room, the way the
Because
We don't have keys.
Or alarm access.
oh, okay.
And it's a little different at the high school
It's a
too,
little bit more
because, yeah,
coordination.
there is, because our alarms turn off with a card key as opposed to other sites where you'd have to actually disarm the alarm. And I don't know where that alarm panel is. I don't know whether it's in the office, so they might need
Yeah, I get
access
it.
to an office.
Yeah,
or whatever
I
it
see
is.
why the facilities use
Yeah.
committee created that policy,
But then
but now you're handcuffed to it.
it's
Exactly.
it's really prohibitive when we need the use of another space like that and it's not available at our own site.
I believe that the facilities fees that outside agencies like the basketball
Right.
users over there are intended to offset expenses that we incur because of that. And I think that
This is one of those.
this is one of those instances. And, well, when Alvina mentioned it to me, I thought surely there was some sort of a miscommunication somewhere. Somebody didn't book it in time, or somebody else got it for some reason when they had already booked it, you know, it was double booked or whatever. So my opinion, and I'm just one member of this committee, but my opinion is that if, for sake of ease, if it's easier to pay a custodian to go open up, let Troy in, he's there for 11 hours or whatever, somebody else goes and locks up, sets the alarm and that sort of stuff, then that's something that we can pay out of the fees because it's an expense that we're incurring because of an outside user.
Correct.
I would agree with both. I think there's two things involved in that. One is to change the policy such that they don't have to be there the whole time.
Right? Because
If
we were
it's-
going back and forth
if
with
it's
that.
If it's
If it's a tier
one
one.
of us, if it's a tier one, so one of us at a different one of our sites.
But we also want to make sure that it's a tier one school, not a tier one booster, tier one foundation. I don't think I want alarms going to the foundations and boosters, because they're also recognized as tier ones.
Right.
You're right.
Leaving
But I-
booster organizations alone,
And
non-school employees alone at a site.
Right.
To say, here, I opened it up, good luck.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. That's why I said
the
one of
difference.
us.
There's a difference between, well, and you know, if you think about it, you know, in the past years, Troy has worked at a number of the different sites and would have had alarm and key access to some of the other sites. He just doesn't this year,
Right. Okay.
right? So,
And honestly, I think there are two ways we can address that. One is we can have tier 1A and 1B, which only school, you know, marching band, football team, those things are tier 1A. And then we have a tier 1B, which is boosters and foundations and those sorts of things. The other thing we could do is write into the policy that if a school employee performing a function of that employment is on site, so that people aren't saying, well, Erica works at one of the schools, so she can go to another school for Relay for Life and, you know, do that, unless we want to open it up to that.
No, I think
But-
they have to be a school employee representing the school at that particular event. So
Exactly.
if she's doing something related to her classified employment, then she qualifies. If she's doing something relating to the foundation or something else, then she doesn't qualify.
I used to be a double agent.
I remember that.
Yeah, that makes sense, though. I agree.
And I'm never a school employee for the purposes of that discussion.
As much as people would like to tell you you are.
Well, I get a W-2, but it,
That's a whole nother ball of wax that,
Okay, so we'll put some language together then for that, to include that in the packet. Amendment
Thank you.
2? I think we're at amendment 2 now.
I think so.
It's 2 hours. You said 2 hours?
2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening. And then I was kind of concerned if it was absolutely necessary for it to be 11 hours, but at this point, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, if it was 5
Because it came
or,
in 2
or
and
11,
2.
it's gonna be a split 2-2.
Still 2-2.
Okay, that works. Do we still, though, want to make sure that they've followed all the use on that list? The facility use committee, I don't have my packet in here. They have to, bloodborne pathogens, they have to have all those certifications still, I would think.
The Keenan training.
Because maybe not all the district employees have that. Jimmy and I were discussing a handbook, you know, something should happen. They should, but we just have to ensure that they do have that, like Troy, he should.
Completed it, you mean?
This is
But-
protection to the district.
Well, we're gonna have custodians open up. They're all trained. They're good to go.
But they'll be gone, and if there's something that happens during the event and the custodian's not on site, the district employee we just have to ensure that that district employee has at least those certifications, I guess. you call them.
Probably,
I agree.
for consistency's sake.
Fire alarm goes off. We've had this happen at Bethany because the custodian was leaving. And I get a call and the custodian wasn't on campus. And so, were you there when that happened? Were you there?
Might have been.
I think it happened twice, actually. Once balloons got up there and
Fog.
messed with
Yes,
it.
it did happen
And then
twice.
the next
And they were
year,
both your events.
the next year it was a fog machine. and the-
Machine, that's always a good one.
I went, oh, Mr. Pombo.
It wasn't his fault.
So we should propose an amendment that he can't be at the event?
Okay, here we go. Ben.
High school swimming pool. Principal Faubert.
Have the packet?
They have the thing that you sent to us.
Thing that I
It's
sent?
a draft.
It's a very rough
Yes.
draft, I want you to know. It was all of the thoughts. So I contacted the CSD, and I also contacted Bret Harte Union High School District, who 6 years ago built their own pool at the high school, their high school, and the district runs their own aquatics programs through the district. And I kind of investigated how it happens. The Bret Harte Union High School District, while they run their own aquatic programs, also allow for outside organizations to rent their pool as well if they want to. But they felt at that time in their district that the school district was the best organization to run the programs of the pool, especially since their community had passed a bond so that they could build the pool. So it was kind of interesting that she stated that. I said, really, our community did something very similar. They passed a bond, and as part of that, the pool is being built. And she stated that the expectation of the community, because a part of that bond was that the pool be available for public use, and they didn't want to leave it up to an outside organization to maybe offer something or not. And so I thought a lot about that. I did talk to CSD. In fact, I have a more in-depth meeting with a representative from the CSD on Monday to talk about their interest or not in running pool programs. The initial answer was, oh, I think we might be interested in something like that. And I said, okay, well, we want to talk to you about that. But as I thought about it more and about the commitment that we made to our community as a district and telling our community that, as part of this bond, we're building this facility and these facilities, not just the pool, but the tennis courts, the theater, all of the new facilities that are being built as part of the selling point for the bond was telling our community that these would be available for community use. And I kind of sometimes believe in the old adage that if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. And I don't want to necessarily leave it up to chance to an organization that may or may not be interested, depending on the community's interests and whatnot. So the conclusion and recommendation that I came up with was that we do similar to what Bret Harte Union, is that, I'm saying that right?
What's it called?
Bret Harte Union High School District. It's in the foothills. And in fact, a lot of the Yeah, the Mighty Bullfrogs. They have had a lot of information on their own website. I actually talked to the aquatic director who opened the pool, and there's tons of information on their website about how they run their pool, pay scale of their aquatic director, pay scale of the student lifeguards, which I don't have on this, but I'm developing so that we can see how much we might pay lifeguards, et cetera. So my recommendation would be to continue to move forward in investigating the approval of, the writing and approval of a job description for an aquatic director in the district who would be responsible for creating aquatic programs, training student lifeguards, developing classes and clubs and teams and things like that that would use the pool facility on a regular basis, potentially year-round, so that our community can use the pool. Now, what they do in their district is a number of different things. The aquatic director organized an adult swim team that's called a Masters swim team. It's a national organization. I think it's an international organization of adult swim teams. People pay to be a part of that team to use the pool and practice, and then they go to and host swim meets for adults, basically. The aquatics director there also runs a club swim team. She happens to also be the high school swim team coach during the swim team season. They run group lessons in the summer and in the fall as well. And they do private lessons as well, and if people want to do that. So there's all kinds of programs that she specifically developed that I can envision being developed here, especially since our community still does not have its own pool through the Community Services District, and I don't see anytime soon that happening. In this report that I prepared, you'll see a bunch of different things, and I kind of created part of the facilities use fee structure. I just added the two extra things about pool with lifeguard and pool without lifeguard, how much that might cost to these different organizations. If they don't have a lifeguard, verbiage for saying, you know, if you're going to rent the pool and you don't want a lifeguard, you need to prove to us you have a certified lifeguard that's coming in, and that person needs to be there before we let you into the facility, that they're bound to the same rules that the district has for the number of swimmers to lifeguards, et cetera, et cetera.
Does Bret Hart allow outside organizations to bring in their own lifeguards?
Yes, they do. Similar to this, yeah. Part of, as I was thinking about this plan, because I'm doing a whole lot of, I'm helping to write the district CTE plan, and part of that, while I'm thinking about that, is thinking, gee, this would be really nice to incorporate our business pathway and our career technical education pathway for recreation management, having, you know, training lifeguards, our own lifeguards as part of internship opportunities for students, paid internships for students, et cetera. We already have a sports management class that we're working into one of our pathways, and so it would be nice to have a facility to do that with. So there's all kinds of opportunities, not just on the recreation end for the community, but there are a lot of educational connections that we can make through our career technical education programs that would help to benefit our programs. If we have an on-campus program that's benefiting the community, it's basically like a business, being able to, you know, have real-life examples for our students to talk about revenue and expenditures, and in a public environment, how do you make sure that revenue and the expenditures match, right? So that the pay for an aquatic director and your lifeguards aren't exceeding the amount of revenue that you bring in, and to make sure that it's at least cost neutral, if not cost beneficial at the end. Trying to see if there's anything else I want to highlight before you guys have questions for me. I put some sample pool rules and procedures. I actually have tons. The aquatic director literally sent me her summer schedules and what they look like and how they advertise and all those kinds of things. And having an aquatic director, I want to say that this is not something that the high school administration could handle. I don't even believe that it's something that the facilities director of maintenance operations and transportation can handle. This is a separate entity within itself. You have a question? You look like
Well,
you have a question.
when you
He's
said it's
leaning-
not something that the district, or the high school
Not
can
something
handle.
that a high school administration can take on.
What I heard was, we can't do this, but what you meant was, we would need to hire
That's
a
what I'm
group
saying.
to
We
do
can't do
this.
that. We would
Organically.
need to
We cannot
hire
do it
an
organically.
individual who would be responsible, and I believe developing a competitive salary for a recreation director, and then basically setting that contract up to say, your work year is as long as you can support yourself, right? It needs to be cost neutral as much as possible. And so you develop these programs to ensure that we're bringing in enough revenue to cover the costs. Now, initially, it might cost it always does. When you start something up, it's going to cost a little bit more. But we should make a goal, if this were to be the plan, to become cost neutral within a certain amount of time and really work on a consistent basis to have an aquatics director come and make reports to the facilities committee about the progress that's being made, what are the advertisements that are going out. And so it's going to be important, if this is the plan, to make sure that there are consistent checkpoints along the way to ensure that there's maybe a 2 or 3 year plan to become cost neutral over the long haul.
Well, I don't, my suggestion would be, not necessarily, cost neutral would be the ideal goal, but I don't think that if it's not cost neutral, we don't
That we
do
ditch
it.
it, yeah.
Because if we have a pool, things like chems, you're going to put chems in the pool whether we have,
Right.
there's a certain sunk cost that's a minimum cost that just having it as a district, that's how much we're going to pay.
And it's
And
a
I
lot.
think that giving that program the credit for that minimum cost of, chems have to be in there all the time and they have to be checked all the time. So giving them some sort of a credit would be reasonable, because we're going to pay it no matter what.
Right.
Yeah, the chemical usage is going to change with the physical usage.
Yeah.
But there is some level of
Right.
chemical usage and pumps and all those things
Right.
that needs to be happening. whether
an
there's
ongoing
anybody
basis,
in
right.
the pool or not. Question I had on the aquatics director, you're looking at something that's a potentially 12-month employee.
Potentially, if they're the only example I have is Bret Harte Union High School District, and initially she started as a full-time year-round employee, and then she found that right about October, people didn't really want to go to the pool. It's an outdoor pool up there, and it's colder where they are, and it gets cold
So
here, right?
instead of having a very long summer vacation, they have a very long winter vacation.
Right. And so what she said is they stop activities after water polo season is over in the fall, and then they start it back up again in the spring. They start lessons back up, and they start, water aerobics for adults, and they do the swim teams and things like that. So there's a gap at some time in the year. So it's going to have to be kind of a feel out thing. And that's what she said. We had no idea. So we started this. And initially, that first year, she said, I worked the entire year, because even when there was nobody there, when we decided we were going to winterize the pool for a couple of months, she had so much to do to just analyze what had happened over the first summer
Right.
to October and plan for the next year, that she used those 3 or 4 months to just plan advertising and scheduling and evaluating what had happened that summer, so that they can make sure that they're not offering too much or too little, et cetera. So I would imagine that the first year would be definitely the entire first year. And then after that first year, that aquatics director would have to come with recommendations. Okay, this is what I think really is going to happen. Because the community is all about, there's going to be a pool. We're going to be there every day. Just like when we open the track for public usage, as soon as it's open, we're going to use it. And there's like 2 people out there, if that. So Yeah, I mean, it will depend on the actual usage of the pool, and maybe our community will surprise us. They might want adult lap swimming every morning at 5 a.m. or, I don't
And
know.
As far as winterizing the pool, I'm not sure how our solar heat is going, how efficient it's going to be, how cold it can be and
Right.
still heat water. All those things are to be seen. But if we can heat the pool in the wintertime and not cost money to
Right.
heat it and get some usage out of it, since we're going to have to, even when you winterize the pool, you still have to have some chemicals going in there and
Yes.
stuff. Otherwise, in the springtime, it's
get
green.
algae, yeah.
So, like you said, it's something that will be a lot of learning in the first year to figure out what works and what doesn't work.
Well, and an aquatics director is going to do more than just the programs. They're the point person for all things pool, right? They're going to communicate really closely with Jimmy, but ultimately they're going to test the water. They're going to, they may not be the person like servicing the pool, but they're going to be able to give a lot of information to say, hey, here's the things that need to be done in this area. It's their domain, right? And so making sure that they have the skills to do that, as well as hiring somebody who has enough skill to teach lifeguarding classes so that our own students can benefit and work in our own town in the summer. So that that person can also train swim teachers, can't remember what they call them. Anyway, the teachers of the swim classes for kids. It's important to make sure that that person is able to do that, so that it's all self-contained.
You mentioned that in Bret Hart, the aquatics director is also swim team coach. Do you envision this position including some coaching and or teaching responsibilities at the high school, or is that?
It could, especially if that person has a teaching credential, or if they're willing to get a career technical education credential. It definitely could work into that, where they could teach a recreation management class alongside, so that, part of their salary is, well, you're going to teach a class, 6th period every day. And the other thing is that the pool will be used much more than just for community stuff. Well, outside of our own swim team and our own water polo teams, PE classes do swimming, right? And typically your freshman PE class in the spring, you'll have a unit of swimming, especially for students, because there are some who are teenagers and don't know how to swim. It's, for safety reasons, our teachers can teach them how to swim as well. So there are other purposes for the pool during the school year.
Would you be looking at including certifications and or credentials in the job description?
Yes. And I wrote a kind of a rough job description as part of the packet.
We could have their director. of
I
HR
kind of
review
used
it.
I took some things from some of our own job postings, and then I took Bret Hart's and kind of merged a bunch of that stuff. And I'm sure there's stuff we can add or take away from that, but that's my first stab.
It's a good start.
Right, and again, the salary is just a stab. I basically, what I did with the salary is I looked at the Director of Food Services job position, and I divided that position by their 191 days, and then I multiplied it by 260 days, which is a typical year-round kind of position. So that's where those numbers came from, but it could be less, it could be more. I know Bret Hart has kind of gone up and down both ways. So it just depends, but we do want to attract somebody who is going to work hard at making sure that this works, and that it's somebody who can give us some real data and crunch the numbers, and be somebody who can, again, interface with students, interface with community and adults and all those kinds of things.
Well, I like the idea of having someone in a position where they are making the program self-supporting, in that if the program isn't successful enough, then their job gets cut back because
Right.
they're not,
It's like not a guaranteed 260 days a year. We're going to, and I think that you advertise it that way, you interview it that way, and you say, look, your job is to
and
make your job.
I think we could probably tell them The first year will be 260 days. After that, it's
It
up
depends
to
on-
the
yes.
success of the program.
Exactly.
And I apologize if any of these questions were stuff that.
No, it's okay.
is
You guys
covered
just
in
got
your-
it, so.
we
Just put it together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My thought is, that, because I see the two options, but I think from what I'm hearing, we're not really interested in having an outside entity run it. Or is the
That's my
suggestion that
opinion.
you?
That is my recommendation and opinion.
Well, so maybe you're saying, look, I'll investigate it and do a full-fledged proposal both ways. And if so, okay. My fear, no matter what you propose, my fear or my concern is that even in the bond documentation, it is a school pool first. It serves the children of the
Yes.
district. And to the extent it is not being utilized to serve the students of the district,
Right.
then we're going to make it available to the public. And if we have an outside program, we actually have to give them a certain amount of time frame of control. Right?
Exactly.
We can't say, well, we're going to take it back in 3 months. We have to give it
Right.
to them.
Or 2 weeks from now, we know you had lessons, but we actually have something. We can't do that.
Right. And
No
so
control.
I'm like, I don't see myself. I mean, it would have to be a really, so I just don't see
So-
myself voting for outside control.
And,
Go ahead.
and to be honest, this committee has always been our students first in all of our facilities.
Right.
You know, and that's the way it has to be, because that's who our facilities are
Yes.
built for, and that's who we provide them for. And that's why when outside groups come in and say, well, we need this and we need that, it's like, that's great as long as it can fit in between our needs,
Right.
our students' needs, because those always have to come first.
So 2 things. Number one, it's very clear in our facilities use handbook of this district that is the philosophy. It's already stated in the handbook.
Right.
So that's number one, which is great. I think that's the way it should be, because that's the decision. That's how we should be thinking about the decisions we make. Number 2 is, I want to give you an example. The West High School pool in Tracy was built with a, what do you call it when they partner?
The joint use?
Joint use
Joint
agreement?
use, sorry.
Agreement.
It's late and I've been a long day. So it was built with a joint use agreement, which means the city and the district partnered financially to build that huge pool. Well, this last year, if you didn't know, Tracy Unified bought the city of Tracy out of the joint use contract for $1 million.
Because it didn't work.
Because they lost control over their pool and couldn't use it when they needed to, and it was at a detriment to the students.
And that would be my fear in any outside entity, whether it was a CSD or some third party.
Right, Red
running it,
Cross or-
is
yeah.
that we would lose control of it, and our students would be.
Bear the brunt of it,
Yes.
yes. And that, I agree. That's why my recommendation, like I don't like relinquishing control of the asset that we have, because as soon as we do, then it's likely that students will have to pay for that. And then everybody will be saying, well, yeah, it's great, we have a pool, but we have no control over it.
Right, so unless you can find an organization that will outsource it but let us control
All of
that,
the planning, yeah.
then I don't see that as a viable option.
And I think the only problem with any of this is coming up with a plan that is truly revenue neutral in the long term, because we also can't take money that we could be spending on books and
Right.
computers and teachers and all these other things to support an outside recreation program
I
for the
agree.
community at large.
I agree with that as well.
So my suggestion was we have a consensus as a committee, and if we don't have a consensus, that's fine. But we have a consensus of a committee as to the fact that we're going to investigate internal programs and not external.
Sounds like.
So we can I can beef up this document if you can give me your feedback on it.
I think
now
it
that
would be
you've got
important
it.
to have Ted Miller, the Director of HR, take a look at it as well.
Yeah,
He
as
can
far as the
probably do
HR
some-
end of things, yes.
Can you send this to us electronically?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, but this is good stuff, though.
yeah. It's definitely rough.
Well, we had to have a starting point.
Yeah, and that's what I felt like. I kept trying to start and stop it, and finally it was like, I just need to get all the ideas on a piece of paper so that we can get feedback, and then we can build a real proposal right into the facilities use handbook about it if we need to get an aquatic director job description written, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, it'll be a process, but it's a process that we need to likely track as quickly as we can, and maybe bring information, obviously, to the board as to what is being investigated. Because if we're gonna have programs this summer, that means hiring an aquatics director
Soon,
by April at the latest.
which,
How would we have our students using the pool?
Because you have, well, you can't,
We
they
have
can't. So
PE
what would need to
teachers.
happen is that aquatics director would very quickly need to put together a plan for summer lessons as soon as the pool opens.
I think I heard May.
So May is supposedly, it turns over to us mid-June, you start swim lessons through August. That's quick, so we need somebody who can put those schedules together and identify, because we won't be able to offer our own lifeguard training initially, or if we do, we'll have to rent a pool elsewhere, which is what the aquatic director could do. You could rent the Kimball pool multiple times and then identify students who are interested in being trained, and then if they're interested in being trained, those students then have to pay for the training to become lifeguards, and then actually run the programs as soon as the pool's open.
Do you think that you would see the pool being used without a lifeguard? Because I see that in your proposal, a fee with a lifeguard and one without.
Yeah, so what that is if, for example, an outside organization wants to have their pool party at our pool, and they have somebody in their organization who's a certified lifeguard,
I
who can
see.
prove they have certification in lifeguarding and CPR, and then they can rent our pool, and then our own lifeguards don't need to be there. A custodian would open up, right? We'd have to have a custodian there because it's a facilities use, and the custodian would be there the
So
entire
this
time.
fee is just for the pool, they would still face
Just
a
the pool.
custodian fee and I
Yeah.
see.
and of course, as with all of our facilities, we would have to look into insurance requirements for outside organizations and all those things.
Absolutely, yeah. They would have
show
to have their own
Right.
insurance that would cover them for swimming activities.
So I have to reach out to Kenny and Associates because we have to do these endorsement certificates so we can get insurance and.
And that's
they'll
my question
probably-
about liability, because now it's on us, it's our lifeguards, it's our pool, we're the one running the program.
Exactly.
Someone gets hurt, or God forbid worse.
Yeah.
Then it's all kind of pointed back on the district. So that would be,
That would,
Is that why this
Yeah.
position reports to the CBO
Yes,
or designee?
yes.
that would be one of the expenses that would have to be, included
on,
into
yeah,
all of this, is added liability insurance for the district and
Absolutely.
all those things. Because, as we said earlier, you have to put chemicals in the pool. You don't have to insure it for outside use if nobody's in it.
Right.
So,
And the fee you used was Brent Hart's?
Bret Hart, yeah.
Okay, because we were, if there's another page in here where Rita collected some prices, Tracy charges $71.37. Escalon was charging $60, so you're right in the middle.
But
We
I'm
can charge whatever we want, but I don't really care. It was just a stab.
Well, and I think there's the Civic Center Act, correct? You have to make sure that the fee you're charging is not in excess to what it's
Right.
actually costing you.
Right.
So, yeah, for that, in that situation, you have to be very careful.
If an organization wants to rent, forgive me because I forget the rules. I haven't read this thing in a long time. If an organization like the Athletic Booster Club wants to rent a room at the high school for their meeting, does that organization have to have insurance in
Yes.
order to be able
All
to do it?
boosters have insurance anyway. They just show
But
us
yes,
the-
any organization that rents any facility has to show that they have insurance.
Okay.
and if it's an outside, for instance, trying to think who, Red Cross or somebody else that comes in, then they have like day use
Insurance policy.
insurance. where they get a rider on whatever their other insurance is that covers an event.
That was my next question, is if they're going to use the pool for an event, would that be something that would require an event rider that's specific to that event?
And in fact, Bret Harte Union High School District has a different fee structure if it's an event. I didn't put that in there, but we can. So events are at a different price. I'm not sure why they do that.
Right.
But if it's, because what's going to happen, this will happen, is some club swim team organization is going to want to do
Swim meet.
a swim meet at our site. And if you've seen those, like in Tracy, there are hundreds, like over 1,000 people show up to those things. So there are other rules, like Bret Harte Union High School District has stuff like, if you bring a tent, you can't put stakes in the grass. And there's all kinds of different rules that they have for events like that. And the reason they charge more is because typically they're using more than just the pool. They're using the pool, and then they've got thousands of people coming to park
parking lot
and on the lawns, and they're setting up all over the place, and there's garbage and there's all kinds of stuff. So they charge more for big events like that.
A few months ago, we went to the marching band had a competition, and I forget the high school in San Jose, but they were also having a swim meet the same day. And I went through the pool area to go somewhere, and there were tents everywhere. You know, in the hallways, on the lawns, in the stands at the swim meet. It was just, I never saw anything like that.
Well, and you
before.
imagine those swim meets, they're basically like track meets, right? They're individual events.
They're all day.
And so
day.
each individual comes with their family. And so you've got, 4 or 5 people per family times 300 or 400 swimmers.
And then
It's it's a lot of people.
they swim in heats at the beginning of the day, and then
then
they
not
sit
till
around
the
for a
end.
while, and then they swim again.
Yeah,
and-
so they literally set up camp because they're going to be sitting for a long time before anything happens. So we'll need to have that.
So this is a good start. We have
There's a lot to consider.
The other thing I was thinking was how many is the maximum allowable? You know how we have like maximum load capacity? What's
I'm
the-
sure that there will be the fire marshal or
I want to make
whoever it
sure we
is.
included that in our handbook
So
as
the
well.
county does also have a rule about the ratio of lifeguard to bathers,
See that, you have it on
and
yours.
it's 1 to 25.
Here.
Yeah.
But I didn't see the maximum capacity.
I don't
for
know.
the pool.
I haven't been told what the maximum capacity of the pool
That would be
is.
interesting
Until
because
it's done.
typically in a building, it's a fire marshal's call.
Yeah.
A pool,
I think
I'm
it's
not
the
sure if
county.
the fire marshal
It's
has
probably the county.
jurisdiction. Probably.
Yeah.
And it may be county health or something like that.
I bet we could. I bet Wes would know, Alvina.
It'll be posted when it's done. There'll be
Yeah.
signs.
I'm sure
I asked
Wes.
for this one. There
I'm
wasn't
sure
one
Wes
for
already
here. I'm like,
knows.
where's their
Be
signs?
signs. It has to be posted.
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
Okay.
Any more questions from the committee for Principal Faubert?
on the swimming pool? No.
Thank you, sir.
Uh-huh.
Moving on to,
We just placed the other items on there. I know in the past, we've not have allowed facilities be used because of warranty issues for the first year. And we have more than just the pool that's going to be available. We've listed career technical ed building. Is that even something that we would ever consider? We did the culinary arts that would only allow tier 1 organizations, but,
I'm not sure. We'll have to, I guess, see what sort of interest there may be in it. But
I would not advocate for the engineering room or the
that's
computer
what I
science
thought.
room.
But that's why I wanted to bring
Well,
this up
or the
now.
biomed room. Those are like,
I should know the answer to this, but will we have kilns for?
we will.
We will.
In the art
That's-
room.
That is something that there may be an interest
Maybe,
in.
yeah.
People coming in for a one-day pottery
Right.
course where they throw something.
Offered by
Fire
our
it
district,
and-
by our teacher.
Yeah. Right? As a fundraiser or, yeah. mhm.
Yeah,
I could see a booster organization like VAPA Boosters saying, we're going to do a clay night. Can we rent the room?
But we would still have to think with the rule of operating those and
Right.
putting those rules in place.
Yep.
Just wanted to bring
And
the
the
discussion.
same with like the theater. The theater's a little bit more complicated, similar to the pool. there is a lot of expensive electronic sound, lights, sets, and so we need to think very carefully about how we do that. And it's likely we're going to need to build into the pay structure, the stipend structure at the high school, an additional stipend for a theater director person, so that when organizations do, because we're going to want to rent the theater out ultimately, it's going to be the only game
Right.
in town. But when outside organizations rent our theater, we will not want anybody. It's different than the pool. With the pool, you just get a certified lifeguard. There are specialized systems in the theater that only our people should be able to touch. And so if you're going to use the theater and you want more than just the lights on, you want to like fool with the lights and use the sound and the this, that, and the other, then the theater director needs to be in the room. Whether that's an hourly pay stipend that we put in, like that might be a good idea. That way they're not just getting $5,000 a year for doing nothing, but maybe having an hourly thing. And I would advocate for having a pay structure for a theater director, possibly on an hourly schedule, and also for student theater workers, because there will be technical theater students who, again, through CTE,
I was just thinking
that students could also work alongside that person to run lights and sound for outside organizations who may be doing a play, right? But it would need to be something that we control. We don't want people touching our equipment.
And I think by using students, we can keep the fees
Minimal. Yes.
and the kids are getting experience and learning
Absolutely.
and, getting some benefit out of their instruction. And so I
Absolutely.
think that's something, I think that's going to be kind of a complicated chapter in the,
For students to get paid?
no, for the theater and
Yes.
what's required and what's allowed and.
The good thing is, and I agree with Alvina, I think we give it a year.
Yeah.
If we get it in December, then we wait an entire calendar year to like figure the theater out and to
And there's
train our
nothing
own
stopping
kids
us
and our
from-
own staff.
Well, I was gonna say, there's nothing stopping from our district allowing fundraisers and allowing the community
Correct.
to participate
In
events
things.
hosted by the district rather than
Right.
hosted by an outside.
But not like, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we can vote that way. But in the case of, like Shakespeare in the Park, right, where they've been doing it for several years, like if Billy Bob comes in and says, we want to do a play, I would be less amenable to letting them do it within the first 12 months than something like Shakespeare in the Park, where they've demonstrated a determination to do it.
And
But I think our
And-
district's staff would have to be heavily involved.
I agree.
running
I
the
agree. In other
technical
words,
end of
bending
things.
over backward to help an organization that's been doing it in our
Yes.
community already is one
Yeah.
thing.
And-
bending over backwards for somebody new is something completely different.
And remember, we can have exceptions to
Yes.
this
Yeah,
policy
that's right.
in this case.
We can vote on exceptions.
Yeah.
And we have in the past said, we're not going to allow this, and someone has come in with a proposal, and we said, okay, we will allow it in this instance.
right.
That would be the case.
Well, and it would give us the opportunity for me to come in and then whoever the theater director is to come in and say, okay, we can do that, but we think we're ready for a trial run of somebody coming in, especially somebody who has dedicated their time to the community or whatever.
And to be honest, the theater, as you mentioned, is much different than the pool. It's going to
Yes.
take months for anybody
To
to
really
figure
know.
out how everything works
Right.
in the theater.
Right.
So it's, it's
I
not going to
agree
be,
with that.
we get it on December 4th, we're going to have a play
Play
in there
the 2 weeks
December
later,
8th.
yeah.
Not
no.
even one of ours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
right. It's gonna be till the spring. In fact, I'm thinking the end of the school year, end of April, beginning of May of next school year will be the first show that will be in there. We're not. That's going to take time to just figure out how do we move the lights, how do we make the sound work, but it'll be exciting.
Anyway, I do look forward to allowing the community and outside organizations to use the theater, but I believe that, I agree with you that we need to make sure we know how everything runs and we figure out how and when and how, we're going to let outside organizations use it and how we're going to set that fee
Yes.
structure up and the rules and regulations
Yeah.
that go along with it.
I agree.
So just for perspective, last two districts, the community was not allowed to touch the light board, any of the lighting, anything. We paid the staff member to come in. It was on an hourly pay.
I
I
think we
believe it
agree
was
on that.
around $29 an hour. Don't quote me on that, but somewhere in that range. And that's how we did it. And if that person, or there were one or two people that were able to do light board, if they weren't available that particular day, then the event didn't happen.
Didn't happen, yeah.
So,
And
Have to
think
schedule
we,
carefully, yeah.
I think conceptually, there's a consensus on that point.
Yeah.
and
Even
then
a
we're not going to get the
consensus-
theater till mid-year next year. I say we shut it down at least for the remainder of the school year. And then
least.
we could
Give
look
us
at it
time to get the
again
others and-
next, would be next summer. It'll be a year from this summer.
Yeah.
And see when we want to feel comfortable letting other people.
I agree.
And we could always do exceptions like you guys said, so
That's
kind of where I'm at.
That's what I'm saying, is that we say, you know what, we don't really plan, we don't,
A
from
professional
a
group
policy
comes in
perspective,
and
we don't
maybe they
plan
have
on renting
something.
it out.
But-
But if an organization comes in, we can
Professional group
consider
comes
it.
in, the theater group, they want to use it, we could look at it and say yes or no. But if Ben wants to have his family play, we say no. So we can't. He's got keys. Just kidding.
My family would be more like a zoo than a play.
Is there any more?
Well, tennis court, I mean, I just listed every facility that we were going to be having open. And is that even something that?
Tennis courts aren't a real big deal.
No, I don't know if with that, it's something that even needs to be considered at this point.
I think that we don't just open it to anybody, but I mean,
I think we should probably get out in front of it, come up with a fee structure.
Yes.
How we want to do it, and then if somebody comes and wants to use it.
then we talk about
We
it.
talk about
Yeah,
whether or not.
I agree. I think that's one's a little bit easier to me.
Yes, when is the tennis court supposed to be available? I think Lavinia and I looked into that. Was it like,
They'll be available in
Late fall?
this the next couple
Soon.
weeks.
oh, soon?
Yes, because the tennis team's going to start practicing
Yeah.
out there.
That's great.
Tennis trials.
No, we've been
are
working on the
February.
tennis courts for 3 years now.
Let's
So
move
I
some
mean,
dirt over
there's-
here.
There's tennis courts at the park, so
Yeah.
there are other places in town to
Okay.
play tennis.
Right. I don't even know how much interest there's going to be. The only
That
thing
would
that's
just
going to
mean
happen is
also-
somebody's going to say, "Can you publish a public use?"
That's my
time
question. Is
that
it gonna
people
be-
Can
Is it going to be open like they want the track open, where like
that's what I'm
after
saying.
6
It's
o'clock
like,
they could
is
come?
the community going to say it needs to just be open? And
It's kind of on the back end.
No
There's no
comment.
access right now with the streets anyway.
no, but there is a gate there.
There is a gate on,
On the
the
street.
roadside, on the street side.
That'll be right on the sidewalk.
But is there going to be a locked fence around it?
Yeah, there's a fence
There's a
around the whole
fence.
thing.
But there's a
Now
gate.
there is, but
There's
when
a gate
it's
that opens
available-
up right onto the road there that people could walk in.
Yeah.
We, I believe that we as a district need to figure out the rule, that we can't just say, well, it's not a big deal, so we're not going to open it up. I think we'll get hammered for that. I think we actually have to
I think we can probably see what
develop
other
a
districts are doing with their
policy.
tennis courts.
And
They're just open.
We'll bring it to the next meeting, what we find from other districts. regarding tennis
And
courts.
I'd just like to caution, different than the track is, well, I guess not different than the track. You open it for public use, especially a large flat area like that. Skateboards, bikes, rollerblades, and then you have nets that are expensive that kids like to jump on and over. And so,
I don't disagree with all that. I just, I'm kind of hard-nosed about the swimming pool. You know, the rules for the swimming pool are the rules for the swimming pool. The theater, I'm all on board with, you know what? We can't really afford to replace the electronics equipment in the sound room. So I'm sorry, you know, we can't let you run the sound room. We have to run it, and you will have to pay our people to run it, and that's just the way it is. Something like the tennis courts,
Tennis courts not year-round?
I'm sorry?
The tennis court use, is it, do they
I mean, you're not
impede
going to go out
using
there when
year-round?
it's raining, but yeah, you
No,
can use
right.
it all year round.
Yeah.
I just
and-
obviously cannot,
So I'm not saying that we should open it up unlimited. I'm saying that we owe it to ourselves to
Outside
develop a
school
plan.
yeah,
And,
I think we need to.
and, you know, it's kind of a pain in the butt for something as small as tennis courts, but if we don't do it, I promise you, there will be great gnashing of teeth.
Especially as soon as homes are built right across the street. How come I can't play tennis there?
I used to live
Exactly.
across the street from a school, an elementary school that had its own tennis court, and I rarely saw it being used.
But if you say,
No,
if you
yeah.
say you can't use it, I guarantee you people will say, we would use it 24/7 if you.
We'll see what we can find from other districts, and we'll put it in the next packet.
Let's just say they with the track. They want to use the track, and then we set up these hours, Ben sets these hours, and then
Then we end up with the
there's
school
only a
using
couple
it.
people out there,
If that.
if that.
If that, right.
On some days, nobody.
Usually the only time there's somebody out there is when it's like Sunday and it's locked and they just jump the fence.
Wow.
Anyway.
When they have to hop it.
When it's open,
Jump the fence and hand their bicycle over to their friend.
Exactly. In fact, over Christmas break that happened, and I caught them and chased them off.
The other was the library. I've never been key to allowing at the elementary sites unless the principal was okay with the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts using the library, but there's so much organization and books that are small, they can walk away, that
It's a
we do
big
not even have it
meeting
on the-
space,
it is a
so
great meeting
people are gonna
space.
want,
So when they've selected classroom, that's usually what we allow the principals to decide, but your library,
again, I mean, it's, our community is gonna be saying, well, it's a nice space, why can't I have my meeting in there? The multi-use room is too echoey for us. We want a, more intimate space that isn't as,
Don't rent out any other libraries in the district.
yeah.
I don't know if.
I don't
Well, they use
advocate
the
for
club
it,
meeting.
but it's up to you guys.
No one read the library anywhere else, so.
The library or learning commons, as
Yes.
I understand we're to call it now. Will it be just open? I mean, if you're sitting here at a table, you're looking across at book stacks, or?
Yeah, so it's a big open area
Yeah.
in the middle. And then there's some conference rooms on one side. And on the other side, there's a couple of classrooms and then some 3 computer labs on another wall.
and
Are
some
the,
stacks
will
of
the
books.
conference rooms be accessible from other than the open
No.
main room?
Only through the inside.
The only reason I ask is because conference rooms, if somebody wants to have a meeting in a conference room and you can just, a
Unlock
janitor
that
can
door,
unlock
yeah.
that door and they can go in, have their meeting and leave.
That
But
makes
the-
it kind of like a classroom in that,
Right.
at that moment.
Exactly.
But if it's
That's not
to,
the case.
the only access is with everything wide open, then.
Is you have to come into the
then
library to
I
get
think
into
we have
those
enough-
rooms.
But with high
Enough
school.
spaces for for small meeting spaces that we wouldn't need to.
I just think with
I don't
high
know.
school in session, I think our kids are gonna probably be in there
Yeah.
all of the time, to be honest with you.
Well, and if we still have to talk about, this is not a facilities use thing, but we have to talk about hiring a librarian, a
If we do that-
credentialed librarian and a library tech, because it's a huge library.
Right.
And hopefully scheduling their schedules so that our library is open past certain times in the evening where kids can come and study and
work
things
on
like that.
group
Yeah.
projects or those kinds of
Exactly.
things.
We want our library open until 8 at night, right? We want kids to stay on campus and be with us. And so if we do it right, we should be able to schedule staff to be there at certain,
Because we have custodians there.
if you have a credentialed librarian come in at the beginning of the day, because that's when they should be there assisting students and teachers in their instructional pursuits, and you hire a classified person to come in halfway through the day at noon and leave at 8 o'clock, you can have the library open from 7:30 in the morning until 8 o'clock at night, which I think is great for kids. And you can even flex the schedule when finals come around, like colleges do, to stay open till 10 p.m. or whatever. I just think it would be nice to have a place for them to come. Right now, they've got to go to, the Mountain House Library and those portables over there.
What does the current policy say on like elementary school libraries, the facilities used?
We
Does
don't
it
even have
speak
it
to it?
available. So
Not
the
available.
only,
No.
the only site that I know that they've allowed library is because they have a long-standing relationship with one of the Boys or Girl Scouts. And so they just put classroom, and the principal says, well, I really don't want to give them a teacher's classroom, but this space is available, and they've
So
always let them use
the
that.
current policy doesn't speak to it.
Doesn't even list library.
Then unlike the tennis courts, I would say we continue not to speak to it And we don't, because I'm like, it's not a meeting room. That's not what it is. Yeah, we don't have a policy for the principal's office, right?
And,
It's not a
you know,
meeting room.
In actuality, it doesn't sound like there's going to be much availability in any
No,
event.
because
if-
we want it
if we're
open for student use.
12-plus hours a
Right.
day.
Well, and haven't we even had issues with district or even our schools having meeting spaces?
Right,
So we could use the high school
right,
in those cases.
right. I mean, it could definitely be available for district use at certain times.
Well, and elementary school libraries are available for district use, like DLAC.
They are,
being,
absolutely.
And
And principals' offices are available for those things for that matter.
They are. But we don't list them in the facilities use.
that's right. So that's what I
Cannot
would-
rent my office, I'm sorry.
Just internal use only, basically.
Yeah.
That's where it becomes, okay.
What else was on that list? Anything
That was it.
else?
I
Okay.
had was swimming pool, CTE, tennis court, library, and theater. We've discussed them all. So I think the goal is to add a little bit more. I'll have the director of HR kind of do a little bit of,
Please, yeah.
of that job description.
And then any feedback
bring
you
it all
guys
back
have,
here.
I'll send you an electronic copy.
Thank you.
So it looks like we're stepping away from requesting any joint use with the CSD then at this point.
I'll meet with them on Monday and I can update you
Okay.
by email according to what it is they have to say.
Because I'm hearing like some other districts are doing like a 60-40 kind of split. I don't know what Tracy was doing, but
Well, they're not doing anything anymore.
not doing it
They
anymore.
bottom out.
If the fact that we control it doesn't mean that we're not going to do a joint use agreement with them because the bond got passed. We are building a pool
Right.
with them or without them. But if they have a program that they want, they're like, you know what? In the summertime, if you will offer open swim from 6 a.m. until
Yeah.
1 p.m., we will pay you X, right?
MOU.
Then we can look at that, and if it fits in and doesn't unduly harm students, and I don't know the answer to that, then we'd be, of course, more than willing to do that. It's not that
Agree.
we're not willing to work with them. It's we have a duty and an obligation to benefit our students first.
Right.
I would also like to see a presentation to the full board sooner rather than later on this so that we can get input from the entire board because, this is only an advisory
Yes.
committee and I'd like to hear what the rest of the board says. But I think this committee is all on the same,
Sounds like it.
page.
Okay.
With all of these areas. Sure. So there is obviously February 1st is next week. I gotta go. Thank you, Ben.
Good night, thank you, Ben.
Good night, Ben, thanks.
How soon are we hoping to take something, or do we just want some feedback from the board on the 15th, just to kind of get a feel if they're feeling the way we do? Because we have a meeting February 1st, which is next week, February 15th,
And
March 1st, and March 15th.
I must apologize because I met with Dr. Nicholas this afternoon and set our agenda, but I do not
I think
recall.
it's too
if-
soon, probably to, because this is too
Yeah,
close. There's-
I agree.
I don't think,
want to.
trying to add it for next week, I don't think we're there.
Well, I don't think, I think it's
Yeah.
kind of too late to add it for next week, but I don't remember if there was any mention of it
No.
okay.
Because
Then-
usually when we have our facility use committee meetings, there's a little bit more of a gap to even
Yeah.
prepare the minutes.
So
and
then,
it's- We can aim for, well, it depends on do we need to meet again before we bring anything to them?
I'm not sure. I think I would like to see Ben come and present on the 15th.
February 15th?
Yes, and let the whole board hear this, have input from them, and then then we discuss it at our next committee meeting and try to work out some of the nuts and bolts, if that's the direction of the full board.
good.
If the rest of the board says, we don't like that idea,
Because we can have our minutes prepared by that February 15th meeting, so it'll be in the packet for them to read, what happened. And then we can also have Amendment 2 at the February 15th meeting, and then Ben can do his presentation at the February 15th
And-
meeting. And I'll get some feedback from the director of HR. We'll do a little bit more research from the other school districts regarding some of these other little areas. So if there's some additional discussion, we can be ready for it.
And we are, I mean, we're only an advisory committee, but we are an advisory committee, which means we kind of had to have a duty to at least come up with recommendations rather than going and saying, well, which way do you want us to go, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's perfectly fine for us to frame Ben's presentation with the recommendation of the Facilities Committee is that we move forward with an internal and explore the possibility of hiring an aquatics director and running a program. And if the CSD or any other outside organization wants to have something at the pool, then we can look at what their ideas are at that point. But I'm fearful of allowing any outside organization control over any of our facilities.
So how about if Ben does his presentation on February 15th, we meet on the 21st, wrap up any formal recommendation based on input we get from the board, on the full board on the 15th, and then have it adopted March 1st? That might work.
Tuesday the 21st.
I mean, does that sound like a plan? So is everyone available February 21st at 6:30?
I believe so. And before we adjourn this meeting, I would just like to, although Mr. Strock isn't here this evening, happy birthday, Corey. I'd like to thank him for his service on this committee. I think we got a lot of good work done while he was on this committee, and I will be contacting potential additions to this committee in the meantime, and hopefully we can have someone here for our next committee meeting.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Corey. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
So
Thanks, Corey.
that was February 21st.
6:30. And then we'll let Ben know. We can hopefully fine tune some additional information.
All right. Very well. I see nothing.
Move to
Further.
adjourn?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting
7:45.
adjourned.